Migrant workers are a heterogeneous group. Their migration status, type of employment contract, duration of stay, skill set, income level, and demographic characteristics, amongst other things, influence their access to comprehensive social protection. Migrant domestic workers, seasonal agricultural workers, and migrant workers in an irregular situation represent a significant portion of migrant workers and face particular difficulties in accessing social protection. The unique characteristics and needs of these different migrant groups should be taken into account when developing and implementing policies or mechanisms aimed at extending social protection. My name is Samia and I welcome you to the ILO Masterclass on extending social protection to migrant workers, refugees, and their families. According to ILO estimates, in 2013 there were 11.5 million migrant domestic workers, accounting for approximately 17.2% of all domestic workers worldwide. The majority of migrant domestic workers do not have access to social protection, owing to their exclusion from legislation, the absence of social security agreements, complex administrative procedures, and a lack of information, representation, and inspection, amongst others. Countries can opt for various non-mutually exclusive policy options to address the obstacles faced by migrant domestic workers. First and foremost, legal coverage should be extended to all workers, either by explicitly including domestic workers under existing laws or by adopting new legislation that specifically targets them. Here, it should be ensured that domestic work is recognized as work and domestic workers as workers. Furthermore, countries can opt for the ratification and application of relevant ILO conventions and recommendations, the conclusion and enforcement of bilateral or multilateral social security agreements, the inclusion of social security provisions into bilateral labor agreements and MOUs, or the adoption of contributory or non-contributory unilateral measures. The latter includes social protection floors in both the countries of origin and destination. Lastly, these policy options can be accompanied by complementary measures to mitigate the practical obstacles faced by migrant domestic workers. There are several good practices. For instance, Chile has recognized domestic work as work and is providing access to social protection benefits to migrant domestic workers. In addition, Chile ratified the ILO Domestic Workers Convention number 189 and has signed several bilateral social security agreements and is party to the Ibero-American Multilateral Convention on Social Security. Close to 28% of the global workforce is employed in the agricultural sector, with the majority located in Africa and Asia. Such work is heavily seasonal, leading farmers to make frequent use of casual and seasonal workers, many of whom are migrants employed in the informal economy. In 2019, about 7% of the total international migrant workforce was employed in agriculture. Many are excluded from social protection, either by law or in practice. For instance, they are often explicitly or implicitly excluded from labor and social security laws. They may also face limited legal protection owing to the nature and duration of their work, a lack of incentive to enter the formal economy, language barriers, as well as a lack of information and networks. Each of these challenges is exacerbated by their long hours of work, their often remote area of employment, their low and fluctuating income, which may prevent them from meeting the minimum requirement to access the benefits. As mentioned previously, governments can consider the conclusion and enforcement of social security agreements to ensure the portability of their rights and benefits, the inclusion of social security provisions in bilateral labor agreements and temporary workers programs. They can also consider the adoption of unilateral measures by both countries of origin and destination, such as measures allowing migrants to retain membership in the social security schemes of their country of origin, or the reimbursement of their contributions upon leaving the country if they cannot benefit from it. The introduction of complementary measures, such as outreach programs using mobile units, or increasing the number of local social security offices and digital services, can be particularly relevant for seasonal agricultural migrant workers, as they often work in remote areas. Furthermore, these workers should be eligible to short-term benefits, such as occupational injury protection, basic health care, and maternity protection, as seasonal agricultural work can be hazardous and subject to a higher rate of occupational injury. In Costa Rica, coffee pickers, including migrant workers such as the Ngabe Bugle people, an indigenous community from Panama, have access to the social security system, including health care, regardless of their migration status, during the 5-month harvest period. A family benefit funded jointly by the Costa Rican Coffee Institute and the government is also provided. Migrants in an irregular situation live in constant fear of detention or deportation. Even when they have lived and worked in a country for many years, they are excluded or can become excluded from the social protection system due to a change affecting the regularity of their residence in the country. Eligibility requirements related to employment and residence often exclude them from accessing contributory and tax-financed social protection. Further obstacles include the lack of documentation, which is a major obstacle to accessing benefits as it does not allow them to prove their identity, length of stay, and source of income, which may prevent them from regularizing their status and accessing social security benefits. To overcome these challenges, a variety of measures can be taken. For example, countries of destination can introduce regularization campaigns to facilitate migrant workers' access to contributory and non-contributory social protection. They can also allow migrants, regardless of their status, to access national social protection floors, including emergency health care. In Portugal, since 2015, all residents have access to health care. Migrants in an irregular situation, who cannot provide the necessary document to access full benefits, are nevertheless eligible for certain types of health care at no cost. Given the specific barriers faced by each of these three groups, it is essential that policy options take into account the unique characteristics and needs of these groups in order to ensure that social protection becomes a reality for all.